The resort lobby was roaring with laughter, until a quiet plea in broken English was mocked into silence. An old Japanese man clutched his reservation slip as the manager sneered, "Sir, this place is far too expensive for you." Humiliated, he backed away, eyes shining with the kind of hurt no one noticed or cared to. Just then, a waitress stepped out from behind the crowd and whispered a single Japanese greeting that froze the entire room. None of them knew it yet, but they had just insulted the billionaire who secretly owned every hotel they worked for. Kenji Morita stood in the middle of the crowded lobby and felt invisible. Not the kind of invisible he'd paid for all these years. The careful, chosen privacy of a man who could buy silence and discretion. This was different. This was the invisibility of being dismissed, of being looked through like he wasn't worth the effort of focusing. His worn leather suitcase sat beside his feet, scuffed from years of travel, and his simple gray jacket hung loose on his shoulders. He looked exactly like what he'd intended, an ordinary older man on vacation. But he hadn't expected it to feel like this. The Grand Summit Resort rose around him like a cathedral of wealth, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers and windows that framed the mountains like expensive paintings. Everywhere he looked, staff members moved with practiced smiles, greeting guests who arrived in designer clothes and confident voices. A woman in a fur coat, in September, was being escorted to the front desk by two bellhops fighting over her luggage. A man in a tailored suit snapped his fingers, and a concierge appeared at his elbow like magic. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers, and beneath it all, the faint scent of judgment. Kenji had been standing in line for 20 minutes. The line had been 6 people long when he arrived. Now it was 3 people long, but he was still standing in the same spot, because every time he got close to the desk, someone new would arrive and the staff would wave them forward. A couple in matching tennis whites. A family with shopping bags from stores Kenji owned stock in. A businessman who didn't even have luggage, just a phone pressed to his ear and an expression that said the world owed him speed. Each time, Kenji stepped back. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself this was exactly why he'd come here, to see how his company's properties treated people when they thought no one important was watching. But knowing something and feeling it were two different things, and right now what he felt was small. "Excuse me," he said quietly to a passing staff member, a young man in a crisp uniform with a name tag that said, Dylan. His English was careful, each word placed like a stone across a stream. "I have reservation. I wait long time." Dylan glanced at him, then past him, scanning the lobby for someone more important. "You'll have to wait your turn, sir," he said, already moving away. The word, sir, sounded like an afterthought, something he'd been trained to say but didn't mean. Kenji nodded and stayed where he was. His feet hurt. He'd been traveling for 18 hours, Tokyo to San Francisco to Denver to here, each flight another layer of distance between him and the life that had collapsed around him 3 weeks ago. His nephew. His own blood. The boy he'd mentored and trusted and prepared to take over the company. And all the while, that boy had been moving pieces on a board Kenji hadn't known existed, making deals behind his back, positioning himself to push Kenji out. The betrayal had been clean and surgical and completely legal. It had also been devastating. So Kenji had done something he hadn't done in 30 years. He'd left. No security detail. No assistant. No one who would look at him and see dollar signs or power or opportunity. Just an old man with a suitcase and a reservation made under a name no one would recognize. The line moved forward. Kenji moved with it. 2 people ahead of him now. He could see the front desk, where a woman with perfect makeup and an even more perfect smile was typing on a computer. She looked up, caught his eye for a fraction of a second, and looked away again. Not worth her time. Behind him, he heard laughter. A group of guests, 3 men in golf clothes, carrying drinks from the bar, had gathered near the lobby entrance, looking at something on a phone. One of them glanced over at Kenji and said something too quiet to hear. The others laughed louder. Kenji didn't turn around. He'd learned a long time ago that the worst thing you could do was acknowledge mockery. It only encouraged them. "Next," called the woman at the desk. The person ahead of Kenji moved forward. "One more. Just one more," and then he could check in and go upstairs and lock himself in a room where no one could see him. He was so tired. The kind of tired that lived in his bones and made every small interaction feel like climbing stairs. Next, Kenji stepped forward. The woman at the desk looked at him, and her smile dimmed like someone had turned down a dial. "Name?" she asked, her tone flat. "Morita," Kenji said, setting his suitcase down carefully. "Kenji Morita. I have reservation. Spell the last name." He did. She typed, frowning at her screen. The frown deepened. "I don't see anything," she said. "Are you sure you have a reservation here?" "Yes. I make reservation 3 weeks ago." He reached for his jacket pocket, trying to remember where he'd put the confirmation email. His phone? His wallet? Everything felt scrambled in his head, exhaustion mixing with embarrassment. "Sir, if you don't have a confirmation number, I can't help you." She was already looking past him, toward the next person in line. "Maybe you have the wrong hotel?" "No, is correct hotel. I'm sure. Please, can you check?" "I already checked." Her voice had gone sharp now, impatient. "We have nothing under that name. Now please step aside so I can help the next guest." Step aside. Like he was blocking traffic. Like he was some kind of obstacle. Kenji felt heat crawl up his neck, that particular shame that came from being dismissed in public, from being treated like you were too stupid to understand what was happening. His English was good, not perfect, but good enough. He knew what she was really saying. She was saying, "You don't belong here." "Please," he said again, hating how small his voice sounded. "I have reservation. Maybe different name. I can explain." "Sir." A new voice, sharp and male. Kenji looked up and saw a man in a manager's jacket striding toward the desk, his expression all business and no warmth. "Is there a problem here?" "This gentleman doesn't have a reservation," the desk woman said, her tone suggesting the word gentleman was being generous. The manager looked Kenji up and down. The worn jacket, the old suitcase, the gray hair that needed cutting, and something closed in his face. "Sir, this is a luxury resort. If you're looking for budget accommodations, there are several motels about 15 miles down the mountain road." He said it loud enough that nearby guests turned to look. The message was clear. You can't afford this place. Something broke inside Kenji then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet crack, like ice splitting on a frozen lake. He'd built an empire. He employed 40,000 people across 6 countries. He'd donated more money to charity in the last year than this entire resort probably made in profit. And right now, none of it mattered, because these people looked at him and saw nothing worth their time. He was about to speak, to say what he didn't know, when a voice cut through the lobby noise like a bell. "Sumimasen." The word was Japanese. "Excuse me," but it was more than that. It was the polite form, the respectful version, spoken with perfect Tokyo pronunciation. Kenji's head turned so fast his neck cracked. A young woman was walking toward him from the cafe area, wearing a simple black uniform with an apron, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked tired, the kind of tired that came from too many hours on your feet, but her eyes were kind. And she was looking directly at Kenji. She stopped a few feet away and bowed slightly, a small, respectful gesture that hit Kenji like a punch to the chest. Then she spoke again, and this time it wasn't one word. It was a full sentence, fluent and natural and impossibly unexpected. "Sir, may I help you?" The words were in Japanese. Perfect Japanese. And suddenly, the entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Kenji stared at her. For a moment he forgot where he was. He forgot the desk clerk's dismissal, forgot the manager's judgment, forgot the 18 hours of travel and the 3 weeks of betrayal. All of it disappeared because this young woman, this waitress with tired eyes and flour on her apron, had just spoken to him in his own language, in his own country's respectful tone, and it felt like hearing his mother's voice after years of silence. "You speak Japanese?" he asked, still in Japanese, his voice rough with disbelief. She smiled. It wasn't a professional smile like the ones plastered on everyone else's faces. It was real, warm, the kind of smile that reached the eyes. "Yes, sir. I lived in Tokyo for several years. I couldn't help but overhear. It sounded like you were having trouble with your reservation? Behind Kenji, someone cleared their throat impatiently. The desk clerk was watching with narrowed eyes. The manager had crossed his arms. But the young woman didn't seem to notice or care. She was focused entirely on Kenji, giving him the kind of attention he'd been denied for the past hour. I have reservation, Kenji said, still speaking Japanese because it was such a relief to use words that came naturally. But I cannot remember the name I used. My assistant made the booking, but I left in a hurry, and I think maybe she used a different name for privacy. I have email somewhere, but I cannot find it on my phone. The woman nodded, listening with complete attention. Then she turned to the desk clerk and said, in English with just a hint of an accent, "Excuse me, Rachel. This gentleman is Mr. Morita. He has a reservation, but there may have been a booking mix-up. May I use the computer to help search for it?" Rachel, the desk clerk, blinked. She looked from the waitress to Kenji, confusion and irritation fighting on her face. "Skylar, you're supposed to be in the cafe. This isn't your department." "I know," Skylar said, her voice calm and polite but somehow also firm. "But I speak Japanese, and I think I can help resolve this quickly. It'll only take a moment." The manager stepped forward, his professional mask slipping to show annoyance. "Miss Reed, I appreciate your initiative, but we have procedures." "The procedure is to help guests," Skylar interrupted gently. She smiled at him, that same warm, real smile, but there was steel underneath it now. "Right? That's what we're here for." For a second, the manager looked like he wanted to argue. Then he glanced around the lobby at the growing crowd of onlookers and forced a tight smile. "Fine. Make it quick." Skylar moved behind the desk, Rachel reluctantly stepping aside, and turned to Kenji. "Can you remember anything about the booking? A date, a credit card number, an email address?" Kenji's mind felt clearer now, less fogged by exhaustion and humiliation. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and started scrolling through emails. "My assistant's name is Yuki Tanaka. She would have made booking. Maybe under her name? Or..." He paused, remembering. "Maybe under Sato. Is my pen name. I sometimes use for privacy." Skylar's fingers moved across the keyboard. She typed, paused, typed again. The lobby had gone quiet enough that Kenji could hear the click of her nails on the keys. 10 seconds. 20. He held his breath. Then her face lit up. "Found it. Imperial Suite, 14 nights, starting